Hey guys, what's up? So, in light of recent traumatic events, to say that things have gotten even more escalated in the country would be an understatement. There's a lot that could be said about what happened, in the country during that horrible weekend and the state of affairs that have been going on in this country for quite some time now and how things are continuing to escalate. There's a lot that could be said and touched on, and there's a lot that needs to be said and touched on. But I don't really want to hit the topic the same way that just about everybody else is. Like, the same freaking things are being said over and over again to the point where I find it maddening. Every time these things happen, and the funny thing is, at this point, they're happening all the time. If you bother to pay attention, these things are happening all the time. It's just that if there's something a little extra egregious about it, then it makes the news. But the constant shooting sprees that are going on, the racial tensions, this is nothing new. And every time these things pop up, we hear the same damn talking points, right down to the archaic at this point, video games are to blame. Which it should be seen as a distraction that it actually is. But I don't want to touch on that because other people are already doing it, some doing a really good job, others not. But I want to use this time in this event to touch on something else, which may seem completely unrelated, but it's related, and I would like some people to think about it. I know my channel is small, so it's not exactly going to be reaching a large number of people, but for the people who do watch this, I'm hoping it at least, gives you some food for thought, just to think about, and to just kind of stir about in your own head, maybe spark discussion, I don't know. So, human beings are good at several things. I mean, there's a lot of things we're bad at, but there are certain things that humans are really, really good at, as a whole. The human race more or less is good at adaptation. It's, of course, we're going to talk about our intelligence, our cleverness, our ability to use our social skills and social instincts to, further our species. But there's something else that we are really, really good at, and that's domestication, and basically the taming of animals. We are very good at that. Think about it. Think of how many different species, how many different animals human beings have found a way to make work for them under a specific system. Chickens, goats, pigs, horses, dogs, definitely dogs, cats to an extent, donkeys, elephants, the list goes on. Animals you wouldn't even think that we'd be able to find some way to control. We found a way to control. I mean, there's some others, that are really hard to do. I mean, how many people have a pet bear, but we found a way to put them in a freaking circus to ride around on a damn unicycle, right? So that goes to show how good human beings have gotten at getting animals to more or less, just ignore or at least suppress their natural instincts to benefit whatever system that humans themselves have come up with, whether it benefits the animal completely or not. We've gotten really good at getting the animals to even go against their own interests because the way they've been trained, they're actually able to, they think that, well, by going along with this, that's my benefit. If I do this, I get a treat. If I do this, I'm in a safer environment. My master loves me, and so on and so forth. Now, considering how good that human beings have gotten at this, at being able to get an animal completely trained and to work under a system that it originally wasn't going to go along with, and how far along we've gotten with this and how many species we've done, I wonder if you guys have thought about what's the one animal that we've done it the best with. Like, what's the one animal that human beings are the most successful at domesticating? Any of you care to, think of an answer? I'm sure most of you guys are thinking dogs, for good freaking reason. There's a reason why they call it man's best friend. Not only have human beings gotten very, very good at, training these animals to completely do whatever the hell you want them to do. Everything from, guarding sheep to taking care of your family to guarding the house to like even being vicious fighters. Like they've gotten really good at that. We not only have the human beings have gotten good at that, they've even gotten good at breeding them for certain traits. Sometimes to the detriment of the animal itself. Ask anyone who owns a German Shepherd how many health problems that they got to deal with down the line. However, as successful as we are with the dog, that's not the animal that we've gotten the best training from. Like, that's not the animal that we've trained the most, believe it or not. Though that's close. It's not the horse. It's not any of the farm animals, though. We've gotten really good with certain farm animals. Well, now they're just raised for food. They don't know any other life. Like, if you put them back in the wild, a good chunk of them aren't going to survive. But there's another animal that we've gotten a lot more successful with. Cat Adventure? Some of the more clever among you already know where I'm going with this. Yeah, it's a human being. People love to forget that humans are animals. I meant that. Like, they really like to separate themselves from the world that they live in and from the system that we came about from. Not the artificial system that we've created for ourselves, which is called society, civilization, what have you. Now, we are a part of nature. We are nature, just like all the other living creatures around us. And any animal can be conditioned. Any animal can be trained. And the one animal that we have done the most amount of training on, the most amount of domestication, the most amount of indoctrination, the most amount of just like getting human beings to work under a system to the point where that system is all they believe reality to be, despite the fact that that may not necessarily be what they're originally geared towards. It's us, other humans. We've gotten very freaking good at that. To the point where even things that you think are just absolutely just commonplace, common sense, it's something that's been trained in you. It's something that's been ground into you so that you accept it to be reality, when in fact it's just training. It's just domestication. For example, how many of you guys have a problem eating insects? Just, you're hungry, walking in the woods, you see some caterpillars, just grab the thing, start chewing on it. How many of you guys can bring yourselves to do that? How many of you guys find the idea appetizing? I'm sure some of you guys will be like, look, if I'm starving, I'll eat anything. Yeah, but what if you're not starving? Like, you got plenty of food, but you see, some freaking grasshopper, in the lawn. Do you find the grasshopper appetizing, or would you rather chow down on a hamburger? Yeah, that's what I thought. That's indoctrination. That's training. Because you look at what human beings used to eat, what human beings, their digestive systems, what they were able to work with. Turns out insects are a really good part of a human being's original diet. And there are certain parts of the world where they still eat insects. Us living in our particular civilization, we find the idea absolutely freaking disgusting. But it actually would be good overall for our health. If you happen to look at how many nutrients are in insects and compare it to how much you get out of like the typical meats and proteins we do eat, there's a lot more overall. Like if you if you compare ratio wise, the insects are a lot more nutrient rich, and it would actually be, if you want to look at it from an ecological standpoint, it would actually be better for our system in the long run if we were munching more on them than on chickens and cows and so on and so forth. But that's not our indoctrination. That's not our training. That's not how we were domesticated. Just like we have a whole lot of cows that are being bred for beef that are eating, corn and other stuff to fatten them up. That's not originally part of their diet. They've been bred to eat it. They can do it, but that's not what they're geared towards. There's a big deal about grass-fed cows because that's what they're actually supposed to eat. But it's like, you know what? It's a lot, more profitable, and people seem to like the fatty stuff better if we just feed them the corn stuff instead and feed them these other grains instead. They got them to go along with that. I bet you that cow probably after a while was like, nah, this is food. I don't know what that grass shit is. This is food. Never mind what their system is geared toward eating. And it's also kind of funny how pet owners know this. These days, there's a whole lot of advertisements on, and I'm getting off on a tangent, I know, but these days, pet owners know that there's a lot of, different food products now being advertised. Oh, your cat is really supposed to be a carnivore. This food has more meat in it than the other stuff full of the fillers. They advertise that stuff. Like if you want your cat to be healthy, you need them to eat this stuff. You want your dog to be healthy, you need to have to eat this stuff, which is more closer to what we used to eat in nature. But when it comes to our diet, nah, we can't, nah. Nah, let's stick to what this tastier stuff is, or what we consider to be tastier, because our particular training, our domestication, basically told us that this is what we should be eating. And I'm not really seeing that much on TV about, hey, let's check out this freaking tasty cucumber and caterpillar sandwich. Let's have us a tasty protein milkshake made out of the best ladybugs you can find. Ain't happening. You're not going to see a commercial talking about the nutrient-dense stuff in, a stick insect. Like, it's not going to happen. You're not going to see them talking about how good grubs would be as part of your nutritious breakfast. It's not happening. Because that's not our indoctrination. We can't even fathom it. Won't even think about it. That's how deep our training is. Now, something as simple as that, which I'm sure you guys might either be laughing at or nodding at or might be appalled at, whatever. That's just one tiny example. But what makes people think that's the only thing we've been indoctrinated on? There's a reason why philosophers over the years have constantly told people to re-examine their truths. Because a good chunk of those so-called truths are actually bullshit. We only believe it to be true because that's what we were taught. Or, to be more accurate, that's what we were trained to believe. And it worked because that's how the society needed us to function. There are a lot of so-called truths that we hold on to that we believe this is what our life is. This is what reality is. And the only reason why we were taught to believe that is because it works very well for the system that the trainer either wants to bring about or already is in control of, and it's just a lot more useful for human beings to think this way. The 9-to-5 work ethic that until recently has been pretty much bedrock brought into our system, that was a form of indoctrination. Before the Industrial Revolution, people weren't really thinking that way about that's how they're going to be living their lives, that they're going to be waking up in the morning and going through a horrible traffic to try to get to their job at 9, to then work for someone else for 8 hours, if they're lucky, to make somebody else rich, and then they'll give you a little piece of that money back so that you can go back home and repeat the process the next day. And if you're successful enough, maybe you might make a corner office, and maybe you might just make that $50,000 a year, which these days $50,000 you'll be lucky. Now that's like a pittance. Before that was a big deal. Now it's just a pittance. But that was considered the reality. Like, that's how you're going to live. That was the goal. That's what it meant to, like, if you could get that 2.5 kids and a dog working this sort of lifestyle, you get your house, get your 50,000+, you had it made. And that's what it meant to be a successful human being. And it was just indoctrination, because that system wasn't what people were living under just a few hundred years ago. And yet people were still able to find a living that way. Look at what's going on right now. There's a backlash going on against that. People are now finding alternative ways to make their living. There's the whole YouTube thing, which I'm not really doing. I already explained that this is a hobby of mine. But you got people very successful. They're doing the YouTube route. Or people are doing the Etsy route. You got people making a living putting out tutorials on how to do hair. You got people who found ways to make a living playing video games, and not just simply putting up videos on YouTube, but going to tournaments and winning those and getting endorsements and getting endorsed by other companies and going about it that way. It's no longer this whole thing about, okay, you got to work for somebody else for a living. And part of the reason for that, to be perfectly honest, is this particular system it can't last. There just aren't enough jobs to go around. The economy just can't support it. That's a whole topic for another video for another time. The point that I'm trying to make is that particular truth, that so-called truth, that this is what it means to be a human being, this is what it means to be successful, this is what you're supposed to do, that's eroding. That's going away. It was an illusion to begin with. But the reason why that particular system was there, the reason why people were basically pushed to believe it, is because it benefited that particular paradigm to have people basically working like machines. As long as you got people who can fit into this particular machine, the system can keep going. That's pretty much what it was about. Never mind the fact if it's reality or not. Never mind if it's even healthy for the human being or not. I know several of you guys like playing video games. Those of you who play video games know about the whole backlash going on about crunch time for developers. More and more, there's a lot of evidence showing that human beings just aren't supposed to be working like that. You're not supposed to be working these huge 80-hour work weeks and expect to be productive or mentally sane or healthy, emotionally sound. It affects us severely to have to work like that. But they're still being pushed to work like that for profit. It benefits the company. So the reality that's being pushed is this is what you need to do in order to be successful. This is what you need to do in order to make a good game. Never mind the fact that scientific evidence is showing that if you give these guys some rest, they would probably do a much better job. But it would probably cut into your profits a little bit. But we can't have that. So the truth that needs to be pushed, the narrative that needs to be pushed, what you guys have to believe, is you must crunch to succeed. It benefits the system that they're working under, not the human being or the human beings, period. Not just the individual, but just humans in general. Can't function under that system. But that's the truth that they're led to believe until they finally break down. That truth is, of course, being bashed against. There's a backlash against it, but the industry still holds on to it, and they still want to teach people that that's the way it has to be. Because it benefits a system, not humanity. So why am I mentioning all this? And we can go on and on with this. I can point out a whole lot of things that people want to hold on to be true, that they think is reality, that this is the way humans are. This is the way reality is. And it really isn't. It's just what you've been indoctrinated to believe. And I know people bristle at the term indoctrination, so let me just also call it what it really is. Domestication. Training. The one animal that human beings have been the most successful at training to go along with a system is other human beings. Just like we've done it to dogs, horses, and falcons. Think falcons, you get birds of prey. We were able to find a way to get birds of prey to hunt for us. Think about that for a second. If you can do that for an animal that you can't even verbally communicate with, what can you do with another animal that you share just about every trait with? Imagine what kind of manipulation you can do in training that sort of animal. And think of all the systems that we had in place to thoroughly train that animal to do what you wanted them to do without even thinking about it. They just accept that this is the way they have to live their lives. Ideology, religion, politics, environmental situations, all these sorts of things to get the human being conditioned into living a certain type of life to benefit the system that that human being is forced to live under. This is what we've done to ourselves. I point this out because at this moment, we're seeing people starting to see the cracks of that system and having to now question the truths that they've been led to believe on a variety of topics, not just about lifestyle and governance, politics, ideology, even the way we view our relationships, the way we look at each other. All these things are now being put under scrutiny, but at the same time, there's been a hardening of this status quo. There's been more and more people like, no, fuck this shit. This is the truth. And fuck you. You're going to live under it or else. You got people now doubling down on completely outdated ideas because to think otherwise is too threatening for them. The shootings that we're seeing, there's a whole lot of excuses being made for it, but one aspect of it is that it was done by people terrified that what they were holding to be true is not necessarily true, or the way of life that they want to hold on to is somehow being under threat. Their identity is being under threat. sooner or later, any animal that feels that their particular survival is at stake, they will get violent over it. The sad thing is, these are trained animals forced to live or believe a particular lie that they're now trying to defend. And to make matters worse, there are people who will try to benefit off of this, because it benefits the system to keep people believing this sort of shit. And it will get worse. Because again, those running things know that the human being is the easiest animal to train. We've had centuries learning how to manipulate other human beings. I'm putting it this way, and I'm not trying to go make this a left-right thing. I'm not trying to make this purely about one ideology over another, because I just want people to sit down and think about it for a second. How far gone we've gotten. Human beings at this point have been pushed to a level where they're just like one pit bull against another pit bull in a dog fighting area. The dogs are just ready to rip each other apart because they were trained to do it. It's not for the dog's benefit. Oh yeah, they might get rewarded afterwards, maybe. Or maybe they just might get sacrificed. Yeah, you won the fight, but your leg got fucked up, so I can't use you anymore. We'll just take him to the back alley, put a bullet in his head, I'll still keep the money. Find another dog. Humans have been going through that for a very long time. The ironic thing is, people would rather save the dogs than the human beings who've been put under the same sort of training. This is just one aspect of how badly humans have gotten fucked over the centuries. And I wish I can try to come up with some type of solution to it, but I got none. I'm just saying it as I'm saying it. And I just want people to think about it. There's a lot of people who want to make a lot of knee-jerk reactions as to what's going on. And there are a lot of people who want to use the same tired old excuses and find the same damn scapegoats to so-called fix the problem. But I would like people to just seriously think just for a moment, wait a minute. Before thinking about why we're here, you know, why we're in this situation in society, what a good society should be like, what a proper ideology should be for human beings and all that, start with the first premise. The human being is the first animal that humans have successfully domesticated and gotten them to believe a bunch of stuff that may not necessarily, you know, benefit them, not just individually, but as a freaking species. And then start thinking, well, what would benefit human beings as a species? And the more you start thinking along that track, the more horrified you begin to be at our so-called society today, what so-called civilization has turned into. Maybe if we had enough people that scared, maybe we finally would actually see some real change going on, but who knows? Time will tell. But yeah, I just wanted to put this out just to get people thinking about it, just something to muse over. And I didn't go into specific ideologies for a reason, because people, unfortunately, are a little too domesticated to have an instant reaction to certain words and ideologies and philosophies. So I'd rather them just thinking about it on a more basic level, because maybe then they might finally hear that call from the wild. We'll see. Catch you guys later.